This has flummoxed me my entire footballing life. You have two football pitches, one in Aston, Birmingham, measuring 105 by 68 meters, and then 205.2 miles away in Newcastle, you have another pitch, also measuring 105 by 68 meters. The lines are all in the same place. The goals are situated in the same location, same size, maybe different netting. Corner flags, apart from the flags themselves, exactly the same. And yet, one team looks completely different playing over here than they do over here. It's one of life's great mysteries. Presented by 24/7 Services, let's review another Boxing Day loss and another loss on Tyneside. Newcastle 3, Villa 0. Welcome inside the parlor. You may have noticed one of my Christmas gifts, the all-new Aston Villa cocktail glass with the updated logo on it. These did make it in time for the big day. The kit I ordered 2 weeks earlier did not, which is kind of weird, but that didn't ruin the day. It was absolutely magical. Christmas does change as the kids get older, but it was great. And although we didn't get 3 points on Boxing Day, I did gain 3 pounds, most of it in chocolate and pints, so there's that. I hope your Christmas was equally as indulgent. On Thursday, Aston Villa joined Newcastle United for sharing a dubious distinction of having the most losses on Boxing Day since the Premier League was formed. 16 each now. We haven't won at St. James's Park still since 2005, the day the Magpies were reduced to 8 men because 2 of them were fighting each other. That's the era from which this jersey is from. And now Villa have lost 5 straight Premier League away games for the first time since our relegation season, 2015-16. Have I cheered you up yet? Now, before we get too gloomy, we should take into account the quality of opponent and the difficulty of the away venue we've had to face in this 5-game losing streak away from Villa Park. All of these teams are in the top 8 of home records, with the exception of Tottenham, where this miserable streak began. Still, though, it does feel like we are way off of it in terms of the difference between home and away form, and there are only 7 teams with worse away records right now than Aston Villa. Monday marks game 19. That's the midway mark of the season, and the one thing we can say is that we're not going to face a stretch like those 5 games in the back half of this season. I seriously don't know how anyone would willingly continue making the Newcastle trip as an away supporter. I'd love to know if any of the away allotment on Thursday was there in 2005 for our last win at St. James's Park. I mean, these folks are deeply dedicated, bordering on delusional, but always hopeful. And it's the hope that kills you. This is the Holy Trinity Show, blah, blah, blah. Newcastle 3, Villa 0. That's now a cumulative 1 goal for, 13 allowed from our last 4 visits to the Northeast. Samir made the journey, and hopefully the elevation of those seats didn't give him a nosebleed all over that gorgeous track top. Now, he had said to me after the Liverpool game how disillusioned he was with controversial refereeing decisions, always tipping in the balance of the home team, and how that was taking the shine off of traveling, and I'm not sure Thursday's events will have swayed those sentiments. Paul White from the Villains on Tour Facebook group was also there, capturing some depressing footage, and I can't thank you enough for sharing that with me. It really cheered me up on Boxing Day, Paul. I'm trying to remember if there was a wider spread stats-wise this season. Just look at the XG and the amount of shot attempts. Playing up a man certainly helps pad the numbers. I'm also a little surprised that Pau Torres' second-half header from the doorstep wasn't considered a big chance. But of all the dramatic stats, touches in the opposing box was comically one-sided. So when you see this, the question is, was one team really good or the other really bad, or a combination of both? We all know that the northeast of England is a special region for football and that St. James's Park is a formidable atmosphere for away teams. Statistically, Newcastle is only 5th overall right now with home record. Villa, one place above them, in 4th. But it just feels like when these two teams meet there, Villa's already one down before the game is even kicked off. And this is now the 4th time that Unai Emery has faced Newcastle since joining Villa. Won the first one, but the last 3 have gone to Eddie Howe's team, and they've gone there comfortably. Team selection-wise, I am completely unsurprised that Unai Emery stood firm with the team that beat Man City just 4 games ago. And in reviewing that game and previewing the Newcastle match, I said the game on Boxing Day would be won or lost in the midfield. And when you consider that it was Kamara and Onana playing as double pivots, with Yuri Tielemans and John McGinn playing slightly higher, yes, different roles, but still, they are primarily midfielders, and then Morgan Rogers as well, you might have thought that we actually could have held our own up against Newcastle's very vaunted midfield 3. Big issue number 3, Nemesis Newcastle. One of my all-time favorite movie lines comes from Guy Ritchie's masterpiece Snatch, in which character Bricktop, played by the fantastic Alan Ford, explains what Nemesis is. Now, I'm not going to recite that line for you here and now, but in this particular case, the role of the horrible are played by Newcastle. But should they be our nemesis? Should they be expected to finish higher than us, as Unai Emery intimated last week? Well, they are owned by a nation state, and they have 10,000 extra seats of inventory, which is significant when you're calculating commercial turnover for PSR purposes. And there are similarities between our two big traditional clubs in football fertile regions not named Greater London or Lancashire, and of late, ambitious, resource-rich clubs that have had to walk the tightrope of PSR compliance while also navigating both the Champions League and Premier League. But since Villa's comprehensive 3-0 win in April of 2023 at Villa Park, where Leander Den Donker was among the starters, we have not been able to replicate that performance, and I simply don't understand why, given how clearly Newcastle set up. And here's another of football's great mysteries, how certain teams can keep doing the same thing again and again without being stopped. Like Newcastle combines in midfield to maintain possession, or they press to win the ball back, and then oftentimes it goes very wide. From there, somebody either overlaps by overloading or underlaps, midfielder releasing. Maybe it's a diagonal run by the forward and a ball played between fullback and center back. But before you know it, the ball is in the sides of the penalty area. And from there, whether it's Isak or Wilson or Joe Linton coming in late, the goals go raining in. And you have to respect it. If you over-respect it, though, you leave gaps at the edge of the box. Villa's video analysis team would literally have hundreds of clips just like this one. The players all know. They've seen it before. How do you stop this? And I'm not reinventing the wheel here. I'm not saying anything that I don't think is being said in the dressing room. But firstly, don't let the Magpie midfield dictate terms of the game to the point where they can pick and choose which side of the field they want to attack and overload. And then secondly, let the wide player have the ball. If it's a fullback overlapping, let them have it because they're not the bigger danger. You can cross the ball from over there. It's when they get into the box, though, that's the problem. And lastly, when one of those midfielders releases, you got to stay with them, which is what Morgan Rogers did not fancy doing on the 2-0 goal when he just let run past him. I know I'm making it sound very simple, basic, and easy to solve, and it is not. I realize that. It's just so obvious at times. And I'm not a UEFA Pro license holder, by the way. And I get it. You're down early, then you're down a man, you're chasing shadows, and between Joe Linton, Bruno, and Tonali, they all take turns releasing at different times. You really have to concentrate. But these are the demands that our manager is putting on these players now. And I have to say, over the last 5 away games, At teams that are challenging for the top places, we look so far off it. And I don't get worried about these things, but it is annoying. While most of us were lounging around in our pajamas for the last 3 days, the 24/7 services crew were in their work liveries because there's not a lot of downtime even around the holidays. And 24/7 doesn't just refer to round-the-clock emergency or reactive response. It also alludes to a wide spectrum of services, like the Swiss Army knife of services. Like just recently in Warwickshire, they were at a residential job where there was excessive moisture at an indoor pool. So that moisture, of course, can lead to mold and damage and all sorts of problems. Then at the Stamford Bridge Co-op store, no, not that one, the store in York, 24/7 services had to deal with some coping stones on the roof, and they used this prefab flashing, which will keep the roof watertight for years to come. Again, a little bit of repair and maintenance work now saves you a lot of time, money, and a complete replacement in the future. And I find it incredible that a chain as big as the Co-op has contracted a family business like 24/7 Services to do all this repair and maintenance work, which speaks to the quality of the work, cost, trust, and knowing that it'll finish on time. Industrial, residential, Villa mad. They will take on clients from rival teams and easy to get a hold of. You could find the numbers in the description of this video. You'll find them on the company's website, and you can also use the Contact Us form. I didn't mention this previously, but there was a huge melee at halftime of this game in the tunnel involving 20 players and staff, and 2 of them were banished, including Jason Tyndall, the very involved assistant to Eddie Howe, and Victor Manas, a Villa analyst. And I'm not surprised that Tyndall was picked out of a crowd of 20 and given his marching orders. Not a big fan of the guy, but at least Eddie Howe wasn't man-marked in his technical area for the second half. But I don't think Tyndall or anybody else should be shushing Unai Emery. Still, though, I didn't realize that Emery himself was on 2 yellow cards already, and one more would have him miss a game, and he came very close a couple of times. You could see his frustration starting to boil. Big moment number 2, Duran dumped. I like to think I know refereeing pretty well. I dabbled as a younger man, and this isn't me bragging. It's just that I've had a lot of exposure to football as a crap player, so I understand emotion and how players think at times, and I've spent an awful lot of time watching football, involved in it, looking at it through several different lenses, and also while wearing many different hats. Here's how I saw what happened in minute 32. Fabian Schär was not happy that John Duran barged him over as he was making the clearance in that duel, and he was off balance. I sort of understand that. I saw a loose and non-contact whiff of a kick-out. So no violent conduct, but an indication of a leg being waved in the direction of John Duran, and I think that's what the Colombian reacted to as he just took that extra step. But I'm sorry, if you're telling me that this is violent conduct, it's over for the Premier League. This is deplorable and laughable. And worse was the very Geordie pundit on my broadcast feed, Michael Bridges, who I think was wearing a black and white kit, sitting in the commentary gantry, suggesting that Duran was going after Schär's head. Equally laughable. Unfortunately, in modern football, everything that happens after John Duran's boot graze of Fabian Schär's back is designed to have him sent off. The reaction of Schär himself, his teammates, technical staff, the crowd, all whipping Anthony Taylor into a frenzy, and he will never turn down the chance for an ISO cam red card moment. What's shocking here, however, is that VAR backed him up as quickly as they did. And this just speaks to the complete and utter incompetence of Premier League refereeing. Arbitrary, inconsistent, standards that change from week to week. We don't know. Processes that are suddenly introduced. When I go a week without mentioning a major goof-up by a Premier League match official, it's a minor miracle at this stage. I realize John Duran is young. He's still learning, but even at this stage of his career, he has to know it's never the instigator that gets punished. It's always the retaliator. And here's where Fabian Scher's nous and experience comes into play. I said it, and I'm convinced of it. The whiff, the indication of a kick-out, and you cannot convince me anyway that Duran could have avoided that extra step, not having it. He knew what he was doing. But still, if you're telling me that's violent conduct, then Premier League referees and match officials are an even bigger joke than their international reputation. And this didn't just make the task at Newcastle that much more difficult. It's possible we'll now lose Duran for Brighton, Leicester, and Everton away, although the club has said it will appeal and that they might have started that appeal before the game even finished. But I simply cannot see them rescinding that red card because they don't want to undermine their golden boy poster child referee, Anthony Taylor. How depressing is that, by the way? And I said before, it's rare that refereeing gets under Unai Emery's skin where he's working the fourth official, but I thought Anthony Taylor was having a stinker before the sending off. And fair play, and here's where I'm going to give credit to Eddie Howe. Even he said it was harsh. I'd be fascinated to know how Unai Emery handles this from a man management perspective with John Duran, because in Emery's words, the situation was avoidable from Duran's perspective. Still, he was fuming, Unai Emery, because all he wanted was for VAR to send Anthony Taylor to the monitor and have another look at it, just like he wanted them to do 2 weeks ago with the Rodgers penalty incident at Nottingham Forest. What's the point of having a video assistant referee and reviews if you're not going to use them in these kinds of circumstances? Anthony Taylor, no problem giving a red card right away to Duran, but won't give a yellow card for a blatant shirt pull by Anthony Gordon. So is tugging on a player's shirt as they're breaking away a yellow card in this league, or is it not? Again, inconsistent standards week after week. And you know this organization insulates one another from scrutiny, so they're not going to reverse this. And the number one big moment that defined Newcastle 3, Villa 0, 80-second stinker. As I've mentioned numerous times already, this fixture has haunted Aston Villa, not just in recent history, but in ancient history. 2005, by Premier League terms, is ancient history. And the last two visits, 4-goal horror shows that could have actually been worse. So I imagine the first item on Unai Emery's fixture to-do list was to have a good start. Get a foothold of the game, quiet the crowd, gain some confidence. I thought it was a good omen that we won the coin toss and forced Newcastle to switch ends from what they prefer. 80 seconds in, we concede. So number one on the Newcastle to-do list, wiped out before 90 seconds was even reached. I can't understand how a team like Everton have 7 clean sheets already to their name this season, and we cannot prevent the ball from going into our goal 80 seconds from the kickoff. And you remember how I said this game was going to be won or lost in the midfield? Well, before ball hit netting, we had 2 glorious chances to win the football back and take possession over. And in both circumstances, we were soft as baby shit. The first opportunity, Youri Tielemans is just so late and slow to react. And Youri was great against Manchester City, but this is a player about craft and creativity, not necessarily about going into a tackle, even though we've seen him go into tackles. It's just that on this occasion, he didn't. I would have loved for Youri to go to ground, even give away a foul, knock the ball into touch, but get stuck in. And it would have sent a message to the opponent and to his own teammates that we are here to play and we're going to be difficult today. Then seconds later, Boubacar Kamara, who was also excellent against Manchester City, had a glorious opportunity to win possession back for us, which he did, and to keep possession for us. He had the time, he had the space. His first touch was terrible. Yes, it was an awkward bounce. Second touch worse. And there's that central midfield beast for Newcastle, Sandro Tonali, winning the ball back again. So if issue number 1 was not to concede early, issue number 2 on the Newcastle to-do list would have been win your midfield duels. We did neither. Now for the final actions, 80 seconds in. I said earlier, Newcastle loves to go wide, overload, overlap, and Lewis Hall makes a fantastic wide overlapping run that bamboozles Matt Cash into making a decision, and he makes the wrong one. Let the wide guy have it. He's not the danger man. Joe Linton and Anthony Gordon are the danger men, and Ezri Konsa is nowhere to be seen either, because if you allow Anthony Gordon that much space to tee one up, guess what's going to happen? So yes, the final actions, not great. Mistakes were made. But as I say so often on this show, including 2 weeks ago, the problems start in the opposition half with poor play upfield. And Kamara, who I looked around and said, where is he? Where is Boubacar Kamara? Is he playing in this game at all? Amadou Onana frustrated me on Thursday as well. Only one player in the park is bigger physically, and that was Dan Burn, but Dan Burn does not have the technical ability or the pace or the potential of Amadou Onana. What Dan Burn does have, however, is the ability to be a horrible and in the Premier League, nice guys don't often do so well. Onana has to play to his size. I realize he's young. I realize he's still learning. I still think it's a great signing, but sometimes you got to stick your nose into the ugly, dirty areas, and sometimes that nose is going to get bloodied. This is what we are not getting right now away from Villa Park. And before you want to blame the defenders for the final actions leading to goals, remember to rewind the video by 30 seconds and see what happens beforehand, just like at Forest. The Sill Hill Brewery star performer goes to the entire complement of Aston Villa's traveling support. Honestly, I do not understand why anybody would want to go to that fixture. 3 hours by coach, one way on a good day, but then there's the cost, the time away from family and friends in the post-Christmas revelry, just to see Villa not score, Newcastle score 80 seconds in, another deplorable refereeing performance. I mean, why would anybody want to do that? You deserve a wide variety of award-winning, handcrafted, Birmingham-brewed beers. My son got a VR for Christmas last year, nice for him, and this year he got this app called Wander, so I spent part of Christmas Day wandering around Birmingham. It was amazing. It was actually very nostalgic. So I went from the Sill Hill Tap Room to Villa Park, indeed, a 20-minute walk or so. And you could do that on Monday when Brighton comes to town for the final home game of the year. And if you are still doing some holiday entertaining, may I suggest getting a Mingler, a variety pack of Sill Hill offerings. I've actually put a link in the description of this video where you could order them online. And so our road record falters further. We didn't score first or at all. Our goal difference is minus overall on the season, with another conceded in that final 15-plus stoppage time. 2 clean sheets on the year. Remember, Everton have 7. And that's now starting to look like a personnel problem rather than a tactical one. Now the Duran-less, pending appeal, not holding my breath, and Matt Cashless Aston Villa will welcome Brighton and Hove Albion to Villa Park on Monday for the final league fixture of calendar year 2024. And that may work out, actually, because Ollie Watkins has absolutely feasted on Brighton over the past couple of seasons, including the hat-trick he scored at home last year. Brighton were playing Brentford Friday morning, so that gives them one less day to prepare for Monday's clash. And at the time of recording this, they were 3 points behind us in the mid-table neighborhood we're now operating in. So even though it is just the midway point of the season, there are certainly implications to this game. It's also a new look Brighton and Hove Albion from last year's De Zerbi model, but they have a few injuries, especially to the more senior players to contend with: Adam Webster, James Milner, Danny Welbeck, Solly March. Still, though, games between these two teams over the years have been highly watchable. Obviously, there's going to have to be some kind of change at the back with Matt Cash suspended, but it was good to see Leon Bailey come back and actually look lively in his brief cameo at Newcastle, and Jacob Ramsey is also on the cusp of returning. That gives us a little bit of optimism heading into the new year. Do you know, I've really grown into disliking Boxing Day games. Maybe we'll get to host one again sometime in the near future, probably against Liverpool, Chelsea, or Manchester United. But in the rare occasion, rare as rocking horse, where you do actually win a Boxing Day game, well, then it's a nice distraction. A Boxing Day loss feels like an interruption to my wonderful week of downtime. It's the best week of the year between Christmas and New Year's, where there's still plenty of chocolate and cheese kicking around. Your gifts still feel new, like novelties, and there's lots of lounging and downtiming and television binging. Until Monday, stay festive. And as always, and speaking of gifts that still feel like novelties, up the mighty Villa.